Hello, I'm Liam Turner, the digital editor at CIH. Today for CIH Unlocked, we're going to take a look at the 5-point plan for housing in Wales, which was published by CIH Cymru, I believe, earlier this month, Feb 2024. I'm joined by Matt Dix, who is the National Director of CIH Cymru, who's going to kind of tell us a little bit about it and go through each of the 5 points in turn. So yes, hello to you, Matt.
Hi, and hello everyone who's listening. First, just a bit of context. So this is our sort of manifesto for the Labour leadership campaign that's currently going on in Wales. So this is very much a manifesto in the sense of, manifestos that organisations and third organisations do in terms of a general election or a devolved nation election. So it's very much that sort of narrative piece, setting out a vision for housing, because at the end of the day, the next First Minister, well, he's going to be the next First Minister, whoever wins, until the end of this Senate term, which is going to be 2026. So it's very important that we try and influence that. And to be fair, the government, the current government has been very, very supportive of the housing sector and what it's trying to achieve. But we're still in a situation where we have 11,000 people in temporary accommodation. Around 3,000 or 4,000 of those are children. We still have around 70,000 to 130,000, depending on which stat you believe, on the social housing waiting list. So obviously, and still an issue with street homelessness, and all these figures are going up. So we obviously have an issue, and we're not getting to where we need to get to. So this is about the vision. So trying to set out a vision in what we've been talking about in our 5-point plan. So back to the first one, which is incorporation for the right to adequate housing. Well, that I'm going to probably mix metaphors here and choose lots of different metaphors, but it's the umbrella, if you like. It's that pulls everything together. Yeah. It's the rucksack that you put everything else in. So choose your metaphor. But we've been running a campaign with our campaign partners, Shelter Cymru and Tide Power, since about 2018 to get full incorporation of the right to adequate housing, because we believe that's the driver that changes the paradigm, that shifts the dial, that brings in that higher amount of investment, that prioritizes it more. It's almost like the sort of 1947 moment around housing, around the health service. It makes it a national mission and a fundamental mission of government. I suppose that's our biggest ask.
You mentioned there, kind of CIH Cymru and other organisations have been kind of pushing this since about 2018. Yeah. So just wanted to get your thoughts on how close do you think we are now in getting this, getting the right to adequate housing enshrined into Welsh law?
Well, we've had a commitment from the Welsh government. So that was part of their cooperation agreement with Plaid Cymru. So the commitments to bring forward a white paper on the right to adequate housing and fair rents. So that's a commitment. It's still live. We've had the green paper, and we're expecting the white paper in the summer. So as a precursor to legislation, we're in a good position. And at a philosophical level and a committed level, the Welsh government is fully committed to it. Now the difference we have is around the sequencing. As I was talking to, what comes first? A bit of chicken and egg here. So the minister's response is, we want to get to that end point, which is that everyone has a right, and a fully justiciable right, to access an adequate home. And we will define what adequacy means within that context, but based around the European covenant. But our point is that the legislation needs to be the starting point. It's the driver that changes behaviour. It's the driver that changes the paradigm. It shifts the dial. It forces this government and future governments to bring forward strategy and ensure that adequate funds are invested into addressing the housing crisis and ensuring that housing is a priority. So how close are we? Well, we're a lot closer than we were. We're going to have a white paper on it, which considering where we started, is probably a very, very good result in anyone's analysis of the situation. But that's where the difference comes now in terms of the sequencing. So we're still trying to persuade government of that.
Moving on to the second point then in the plan, which is all about kind of securing a commitment from government to long-term capital investment so that we can build more affordable housing, retrofit existing housing stock so we can, improve the energy efficiency, make them greener, etc. I know you've already touched on this point a little bit, but could you just talk us through kind of what this point kind of all about?
Yeah, and this follows directly from the right to adequate housing, doesn't it? So, I mean, in every jurisdiction in the UK, it's about, well, you need to fund adequately, from the public purse to support the building of social and affordable housing. It's an ask of the Westminster government, it's an ask of the Scottish, Northern Irish governments. So that's the main ask, in terms of the housing sector across the UK. Provide us with the adequate funds to meet the ambition that we need to meet in order to house everyone adequately. So what a right to adequate housing would do, it would force government to come up with a housing strategy that provides adequate funding to do that, or available funding. Now that doesn't mean every single penny within the Welsh government budget, but they would have to explain or justify why they're not allocating enough money to all elements of the housing system, whether it's housing support or whatever, if there was a justiciable or a right to adequate housing. So it would force them to focus that. But, at the moment, to be fair to the Welsh government, we do have record levels of investment into social housing grant. They do get it, but that's not worth what it was three years ago at the start of the spending review period, inflation. So that's diluted a little bit. And as I say, as you bring in inflationary pressures and supply chain pressures and labour pressures into that, then that 20,000 target that the Welsh government has set for the sector in terms of affordable homes by the end of this Senate term is increasingly more difficult. And when you look at the sums being invested into retrofit, we've just had the Welsh Housing Quarterly Standard, coming online in April. That's been diluted a little bit. I mean, originally it was looking at, all social housing to be retrofitted to EPCA rating by 2033, which, would have been, very, very difficult to meet. Well, impossible, in fact. But even now, even with the sort of diluted ambition a little bit, it's still going to be difficult in terms of the funding geography that we have. They've awarded. So always looking for the government to commit to more investment into housing, and understanding that's at the root cause of the housing crisis that we face. We all know the number of homes sold under right to buy that haven't been replaced. We all see the numbers of social housing built over the last 3 or 4 decades. It's structural and systemic, and at the root of it is supply. We all know that, and then that inevitably has a knock-on effect. You're more reliant on a PRS that is, the second biggest tenure now, when it was always sort of third biggest tenure. That's more landlords are pulling out the PRS because of inflationary pressures, etc. So that becomes more difficult. So fundamentally, the heart of everything is about addressing that supply issue.
Yeah, for sure. And moving on to the third point then, in the plan, which is it's all about skills, which I feel like it's becoming something people are talking about more and more in the sector these days.
Well, there's two elements here, isn't there? There's net zero skills, which we need a lot more, to meet the ambition of retrofit and to build, new homes. So that's a lot more training, apprenticeships, etc. we need. And the Welsh government has come forward with, is currently consulting on net zero skills and net zero skills strategy, and we're working with them. So in order to meet the ambition around retrofitting the social housing stock, we did some work with our partners ACO a couple of years ago and it's difficult for organisations because what skills do we need? What are the options we're gonna follow in terms of the types of retrofit we're going to do to the different archetypes of homes we've
Yeah.
got? What investment do we need to do?
The fourth point in the plan is all about the private rented sector, and to me the main thing I get from this is that there's a need for kind of a long-term, clear strategy for the private rented sector so that we can better tackle issues such as the increase in unaffordability of rents, homelessness, temporary accommodation, those kind of issues. Am I on the right lines there?
Yeah, it's just we so where the green paper was about the right to adequate housing and fair rents in the private rented sector, and that's it's a symptom, isn't it? It's a symptom of the housing crisis, or the systemic housing crisis, that we're now more reliant on the PRS because there isn't enough social housing available in which to put people who are presenting as homeless to local authorities. So we rely on the private rented sector. So they are an important and valued partner, and we should recognise that. So then comes the question: is that the long-term situation that we want?
Yeah.
So as I say, in the short to medium term, they have to be a valued partner, and we need to invest properly to ensure that the landlords we work with, and we have done it through legislation, the Renting Homes Wales Act and Rent Smart Wales, to make sure that the homes that we put people in the PRS are equally good as you get in social housing.
Yeah.
So we need to invest. But then the question comes, okay, so with a finite amount in the Welsh government's budget, allocated to housing specifically, then where do we spend that money, or where do we target it? If we invest in all of it in the private rented sector and have less to spend on social housing, then that's a strategic decision that the private rented sector is going to be more of a long-term partner in addressing homelessness, etc. And it takes less money or more money away from investment in the social housing sector. So that's what I mean by what is the PRS for? What do we see it for?
Yeah.
So it's kind of okay. Well, we need a hard, fast strategy to understand what we want the PRS to be, and then work with landlords to ensure it gets the right investment at the right time in the right places.
Yeah. The final point in the plan is all about kind of social housing stigma, and I feel like it's one of those things. There's loads of different problems and challenges within the sector that kind of come and go. But social housing stigma seems to be one of those that it's kind of always there, and it's still not really hasn't been properly tackled yet. But just to read out the point in full. So it reads, to address the stigma against social housing and also promote the positive impact of diverse communities. So yeah, Matt, would you just like to talk us through that one?
Yeah, again, this was a reconstituted ask that we had in our manifesto ahead of the 2021 Senate elections. It kind of based on some research we did with YouGov and Cardiff University back in 2019, I think it was, just testing the value of social housing.
Yeah.
And people who live in it, over almost 70% have a really good good experience. It's just when you drill down to certain demographics and ask them, the vast majority of people in that survey are saying that they value, social housing, or they value the government's responsibility to house everyone at an affordable level. So then there's the jump. Well, do you want it in your own backyard? And this NIMBYism, and that's where the problem comes. And unless to build at the pace and scale that we need to, and for the government to be given the green light, as it were, to really sort of make the building of social housing as on the scale of 1947 and after Addison or whatever, then it needs to have that national mission status, and that needs buy-in from the whole population.
Yeah.
So unless you can persuade, the general public to come with you on that level of investment in terms of the priority you're going to give it, i.e., you spend this money on housing and we solve this in the health service, or we have better economic outcomes, or less money being spent in local councils, our council tax could be lower, etc., etc. Then you need to break this cycle of stigma that's attached to social housing, because our cost benefit analysis talks about an additional 20,000 social housing homes on top of the current 20,000 target, in order to meet the right to adequate housing. So that level of investment and that scale of building, you have to take, it has to be a national mission, and it has to be one of the top priorities of government, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And to do that, you need the public support to make that investment.
Yeah.
So everyone says, yeah, more money for the NHS. Well, why not more money for affordable and social housing?
Yeah.
So
sure.
that's what that's one about. So all these 5 points are all interlinked, aren't they? Into that sort of, let's get to that end point, which is the right to adequate housing.
Yeah.